Now we're here for the item 1 is here, right? Item 5, can you go to the record, please?
Yes, Councilman, item 5 is a report from the planning department relative to the general plan amendment to the community plan.
Okay, it's around 3 o'clock. What I'd like to do, colleagues, if you're okay with this, if we can do 1 minute each. We broke it up into 3 piles as we've been coming forward, and they are essentially support. We have general comment, and opposed. So we could a minute each, and we can do 2 hours, break up into 40 minutes each. And so everyone has a chance to speak and try to squeeze in as many people as possible. And that will be done by 5 o'clock. If we are not, but I know there's been extensive hearings throughout the process. I don't want to circle anyone else to speak, but is that okay? I'm trying to keep it short as possible. And so we'll have a presentation by the staff. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Council Members. Kevin Keller with the City Planning Employment here with Mayor Richardson. We can leave that box there, Mary. That's okay. Will you come up if you want, please? Okay, so Mary, let me go out to the podium. We're also here complaining on behalf of the Holland Community Plan. We have Ken Bernstein, the principal planner, Simon Pastusha, our design studio, Holland Community, Susan Lyons, and Nick Parasich are all part of the team today that assisted during the public outreach and hearing phase. The item before the committee is the proposed Hollywood Community Plan. Hollywood is one of the 35 land use community plan areas in the city. It's also the first plan prepared under the Department of City Planning's new community plan program. We're very excited to present this plan to the committee today. The plan has been developed as a citywide plan, as a plan for all departments, developed in close collaboration with other city departments who benefited from it, especially involved in the Department of Transportation, Recreation and Park Department, the former Community Redevelopment Agency, as well. Mary will give the committee a brief summary of the major plan features. We do have it on the screen behind you, so we'll let you know when that comes up. And I'll end with a brief summary of outstanding issues that we're debating today. During the weeks leading up to this hearing, and likely during the hearing itself, many comments and requests have been made on behalf of individuals and community members. Staff has prepared a one-page back and forth compiled by City Planning Department PLUM revisions for consideration. So you'll have that with you. You can send out another packet if you need it. They're also in the back of the room. There's about 16 items on that. We'll give it an eye to if we want to be able to come back and answer any questions you have about these requested changes as they come up. But we would ask that if the PLUM committee does move the MPA in this direction on these edits and modifications to the plan sub-areas and boundaries. The recommendation in front of you is the Hollywood Community Plan as approved by the City Planning Commission on December 8th. The Planning Commission held a lengthy hearing and a number of revisions in response to testimony. These input was also received at the November 7th and November 10th, 2011 public hearings that were held in the community.
Can I just ask you a basic question? When did this begin? When did this community plan begin?
When did the community plan begin? Excellent. The community plan, Hollywood is the oldest adopted community plan in 1988. The plan update of the 40 was begun and initiated in 1997. Through stops and starts, funding in it was essentially restarted in 2005 and 2006, and we had the workshops in 2005 and 6. EIR was prepared and released in 2011 and circulated for 90 days. We had a response to comments, released a final EIR in October of last year, and brought it to the commission in December. So it hasn't been a whole year effort.
So it's a cumulative process. It's built up, given each phase is built through.
Speaking to that, the plan staff has worked with many community members on refinements and plan outreach. We have many individuals, organizations, neighborhood councils here today that have been involved in this process. I want to just let the community know that these groups have provided a great deal of feedback and continue to provide feedback, including extremely detailed comments on our draft impact report that you were able to respond to. As I stated, let's not forget that Hollywood is the oldest community plan adopted. It was never updated in the late 90s and 2000s with the rest of the community plans in the city, and does not contain the detail and comprehensiveness of current plan efforts. For example, the current plan that's adopted by City Council contains less than 1 dozen pages of text, essentially only one map, and includes no direct policy references to many of the neighborhood protection policies that have been adapted in the last 5 and 10 years. This includes no direct reference to slope density formulas that protect hillsides, no direct reference to naturalization and ridgeline protection. It also contains no urban design guidelines and little direction for bike-built form. And also no reference to bike plans and other creative parkland opportunities such as the Hollywood Central Park. In large part due to the active involvement of our community, we are presenting a plan that contains this policy language in its entirety. Last, before I invite Mary to run through the plan components with you, I'd like to just talk about the issue of the regional center of the general plan framework. When developing these plans, planning staff and the planning commission look to other adopted guidance in terms of our general plan framework element. This is the city's long-term growth element that was adopted in 1996 and 2001 by the City Council. This plan reinforced the role of Central Hollywood as what's called a regional center. This is similar to areas such as Century City, Miracle Mile, Warner Center. And the concept behind the regional center concept is by directing growth into our regional centers and around transit, we're able to preserve and direct growth away from our hillsides and lower density neighborhoods. The geography of Hollywood is fairly diverse. We have all of that in one community, which provides a lot of discussion and interaction about these concepts, but I wanted to highlight that the regional center is not new, so that's been in place for always for many years. So with that, I will hand it over to Mary Richardson.
Okay, I think we can skip this first slide since we have now run through that. We went to APC, we had a hearing last year, that was November 22nd, and we went to CPC December 8th. CPC approved the plan, and the approved plan then went to mayor, he acted on it, and we are here before you today. Our next step will be to go to the City Council for their final action. Here's the geography of Hollywood, in case anyone here is not clear about that. The northern boundary is the 134 freeway. The eastern boundary is the 5 freeway. To the south, we have Melrose and Rosewood, and to the west, we have Mulholland, Wonderland, and Wassanaga. The purpose of the community plan is to accommodate growth sustainably, to focus development around infrastructure, to preserve neighborhoods and historic resources, to provide mobility options, and promote good design. Since 1988, we've had a significant investment in transit infrastructure in Hollywood. We now have the Red Line Metro Rail system with 5 stations, and we have, I believe it is 4 Metro Rapid bus lines. Next slide. And here's a map that shows the location of that transit infrastructure. Next slide. As Kevin said, we are attempting to focus growth around the transit infrastructure, especially in the regional center, which is outlined there on the map. It's the central downtown area of Hollywood. Historically, it was a business district, a shopping district, and it is identified as a place for growth. Next slide. In 1988, development limitations were placed on the commercial corridors and the multifamily residential zones. The FARs in those commercial corridors were restricted to floor area ratios of 0.5 to 1 and 1 to 1. In this plan, we are attempting to restore a floor area ratio of 1.5 to 1 to the commercial corridors, and this is the citywide standard that applies throughout the rest of the city. Next slide. Along the transit corridors and in the downtown regional center, we are proposing to increase the floor area ratios to 3 to 1 and to 4.5 to 1. Next. Next. We are focusing on the most intense development in that yellow and orange area on the map that radiates around the intersection of Sunset and Vine. Next slide. We have heard the concerns about the scale of development that we will be allowing in Hollywood, and so we prepared these maps to show where we are proposing height limits, new height limits in Hollywood, which are more restrictive than current height limits. Those red areas there are areas where either No height limit currently exists, or we are proposing a height limit that is more restrictive than the current height limit. And if you want to study these maps in more detail, we have them printed out. They are at the back of the room available if anyone wants to look at those.
Good question. I mean, when we look at the areas that you're identifying of existing development, how much of the area is already built out versus how much is still be filled in? Is there a way to make that assessment? Is it half, 1/4 filled?
I think that would take a survey that I'm not sure that we have the resources to do that kind of survey.
This is Kevin Keller. Just in response to me more generally to the question about these particular elements,
Right.
the majority of these elements are really for the neighborhood and village character, such as Hillhurst and Los Feliz, portions of Sunset adjacent to historic zones in kind of the West Hall, Sunset West, West Hall, the Hollywood West portion, and also on the upper left of the screen, the historic. One of the things we want to clarify is the Hollywood Boulevard Historic District houses 45,000 today. This plan essentially is expanding that by north and south of that historic district, imposing a new height limit of 60 feet to the north, 75 feet to the south. Although there could be quite a bit of development within those new areas, that's really to help ensure that that scale transitions down to the historic district. So I think to answer your question, probably in the central Hollywood regional center there is quite a lot of surface parking lots, but they would still have to conform to this 60-foot or 75-foot height limit.
These scenarios are cultivated based on all the community meetings you had regarding those events, correct?
Correct. And in fact, this map is a map that we just recently completed last week in response to ongoing community meetings.
But to ensure that the development that comes in will be well designed, we are proposing pedestrian-oriented standards. Next slide. To protect historic resources in the incentive areas, we are proposing a requirement that would require any project that impacts historic resources to be reviewed by the Office of Historic Resources. Next slide. The plan tries to retain the media-related jobs south of Santa Monica Boulevard by prohibiting residential uses there. Next slide. And encouraging a mix of industrial uses with other types of uses around the edges of the media district. Next slide. To manage the neighborhood traffic that flows off of the commercial streets into the neighborhoods, we are proposing neighborhood traffic management plans that would reduce the speed and volume of traffic in the neighborhoods. Next slide. We are proposing a traffic impact fee on development that would pay for programs such as expanding the dash buses or bicycle amenities to give people more mobility options. Next slide. We are proposing bikeways on Fairfax and Fountain, and we are encouraging study of other streets for possible bikeways in the future. Those are ones that were identified by the bike plan that was recently adopted. Next slide. We want to make our streets more walkable, so we did a street standard study. Next slide. Many of the streets in Hollywood are built out to the historic standards, which allow for a 15-foot sidewalk in place of the current standard today is 12 feet. Okay, next slide. And we modified street standards where the street was built out to the historic standard, and we thought that was a better standard than the current standard. So we want to maintain those 15-foot sidewalks. And here's an example of how it works to protect the walk thing. Next slide. To make streets more attractive, we propose a number of streetscape plans. Can't see it very well on this graphic, but that would include La Brea, sections of Hollywood, Santa Monica, Western, and I think also Melrose. Next slide. Yes, in East Hollywood, we are proposing a streetscape on Melrose. Next slide. We're proposing design overlays on Hilders, Melrose, and San Juan Boulevards. And I would just like to run through some of the actions taken by the City Planning Commission in regards to the Hollywood Community Plan. They added language that would strengthen restrictions on development in hillsides and limit development along the Franklin corridor, adjust the zoning to maintain the existing scale of neighborhoods in East Hollywood, expand the number of proposed design districts, and strengthen the protection of historic buildings in the outdoor density incentive areas.
Great, thank you, Maria. Kevin Keller, City Planning again. Just really quickly to highlight, we do have a one-page back and front list of issues from the community made here. These items come up. We're happy to respond to these issues in more detail. We also are happy to respond to any general questions that arise. Just to reiterate, we have received a number of communications, and just for the record, I think one of the concerns that has come up at this point is the issue of height and scale of development. And I think, although Hollywood does have areas, especially as Mary said, along the Sunset Vine intersection, that have unlimited height, this is not something the plan is providing, it's in the current plan as well. I would just want to really say this has always been in place in Hollywood. Our actions as we become a map to have, except for 2 properties, reduced heights, not raised heights. But the plan also carries over some important protections from the 1988 plan in terms of floor area ratio. In 1988 plan, any project over a 4.5 to 1 floor area ratio in the regional center does require special approval by the Planning Commission and City Council. That threshold is also maintained in the new plan. It also places an overall limit on the floor area of the regional center to 6 to 1. That's also maintained in the new plan. So although the plan is providing base level incentives, we are not exceeding any of those upper end limits that were in 1988. That's one of those issues of Manhattanization, which we've heard a lot about. The plan does not promote widespread towers. It actually further restricts where they could go. Also, historic preservation, we work really carefully to include wherever there's an incentive being placed in Hollywood. Hollywood is a very important collection of historic resources. Wherever an incentive is placed, we have matched that with a requirement that incentive must be used in conjunction with the Secretary of Interior standards. So that incentive is not an incentive to demolish or to impair historic resources, but must be used in conjunction with that. For example, lots of properties in Sunset have rear lots that could have development in it, but it's done in an important way to not impair the original historic use. Finally, issues of parking. We are not changing parking requirements, and hillside protections. You may hear a lot about the slope density formula. This plan reinforces and actually strengthens the slope density formula. That's used to basically say that as hillsides get steeper, less units are allowed to be constructed on those hillsides versus sitting there essentially flat. So I just want to find out for any questions.
So you protect the hillsides and you reinforce the environment that makes it.
The idea was by focusing growth in the regional center, we would also be directing growth away from some more sensitive land uses such as the hillsides. And as Mary pointed out, the Franklin corridor and East-West Street, it kind of divides or provides a transition area between some of the more low-scale hillside areas to more of the urban core of Hollywood. So the Planning Commission also directed to remove the majority of zone increases along Franklin to try to maintain that lower scale along Franklin. That's included in the plan in front of you.
Okay, any questions for our staff? Seeing none? Thank you much. Good job. One question.
You're preserving some of the industrial areas, and I noticed there were kind of spots. It wasn't a cohesive industrial area. A few years ago, when the county department and CRA had sent out a memo that we need to preserve more industrial zones for tax base and manufacturing jobs. I pointed out in parts of downtown America that probably didn't make sense there because there was an emerging residential community. We have new industry that could be in the same zone as residential. It's not the same stack industry that we've seen from the past. So what was your rationale for preserving those areas there? My concern is that we sometimes want to preserve industrial land because we want a place for future growth and taxes and jobs. But at the same time, those buildings or those facilities are not built for modern industries. So what type of rationale do you have for preserving those areas?
Yeah, Kevin Keller, City PLUM. really great question. And it all highlights the uniqueness of each community plan. As people have said, Hollywood can be a template for every new community plan. We do obviously Somar, Granada Hills. We propose plans that we're going to have those plans from the will reinforce the unique character there. Just as Hollywood's very different from downtown. In Hollywood, we were involved in that same land use industrial survey in 2007, 2006. I can't speak to the downtown process, but in Hollywood we did have quite a wide range of support, and maybe that reflects that very carefully to our mind. But we have a very, maybe we're here tonight about that. But there's a widespread understanding of the importance of Hollywood media and entertainment, and issue preserving some of Hollywood's backlog of the media district as an area where we can have that kind of creative campus that would supplement some of our office uses and entertainment uses on the boulevard. So at least as applied to Hollywood, it's something that was in R1, it was on M zone, so it was already a restricted zone to start out with, which one I've also held. But at least today, we have had a lot of support for that concept. There is a portion of lots along the Santa Monica Boulevard that are identified as transitional lots that could transition to mixed-use housing. That's basically north of Santa Monica Boulevard. South of Santa Monica Boulevard is basically a retention area. So maybe we'll hear more tonight today about that, but I think we have a widespread support of that particular location.
So there will be some uses, we foresee some uses for these buildings in their medical warehouses that just we're going to keep vacant if we continue to be so restricted.
Yeah, the Hollywood industry, I think, is fairly active in those areas, and they're being actively used for media and entertainment uses that are pretty satisfying. They're actually proposing new projects that reinforce that. So at least in the Hollywood media district, I think we address this issue. But it does not, again, speak to other communities and others concerned downtown. So, interesting.
Okay.